Ever feel like you're navigating relationships and, well, your own emotions without a GPS?
Hmm.
Today, we're diving into the world of emotional intelligence, and trust me, it's a game changer. We're taking a deep dive into a recent Lestallion blog post called 50 Journal Prompts for Emotional Intelligence.
It's fascinating how, like, these simple prompts can unlock such profound insights about ourselves and, how we interact with the world.
Right, and we're not just going to, list out prompts.
Right.
We're going to unpack the why
Yeah.
and give you actionable takeaways to actually boost your emotional intelligence.
I like that.
Yeah, think of it like a workshop
Okay.
for your mind.
Love that.
Okay.
Now, the Lestallion article breaks emotional intelligence down into 5 key areas, starting with self-awareness.
And they nail it right off the bat with this quote. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. Understanding your emotions is the first step towards managing them effectively.
It's true.
So true.
And the prompts in this section really make you, flex those self-awareness muscles.
Yeah.
Like this one. Think about a time you felt misunderstood. What could you have done differently to express yourself better?
Ooh, that one jumped out at me too.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there, right?
Oh, yeah.
But actually dissecting that miscommunication, that's where the magic happens.
Right.
It's like instead of just feeling misunderstood, you can pinpoint what went wrong
Yeah.
and how to avoid it next time.
It's about recognizing that communication is a two-way street. Often, miscommunication stems not from what we say, but how we say it. Reflecting on those moments, like digging into the nuances of our tone, our delivery.
Yes.
It can be incredibly illuminating.
Yeah. And then there's this one, which, oh my gosh, it feels almost like therapy
Okay.
in a journal prompt. Write about a recurring emotion you experience. How can you address the root cause?
Right. We all have those emotional patterns, those triggers that just seem to set us off.
Yeah.
Journaling about them helps us, connect the dots.
Okay, I have to share one more that really hit home for me. Reflect on your emotional reactions to daily stressors. How can you develop healthier responses? I mean, it's the little things, right?
Sure.
Like the traffic jam that sends your stress levels through the roof.
It's so true, and that's where, building a toolbox of self-regulation techniques comes in.
Yeah.
Things like mindfulness, deep breathing exercises, even just taking a moment to reframe your thoughts.
Yeah, it's those little moments when you catch yourself reacting in a way you wish you hadn't.
Right.
Those are golden opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this one time I was having, the most crazy stressful day.
Oh, no.
And I completely lost it over something totally ridiculous.
We've all been there.
Right. And afterward, I just felt terrible.
I bet.
And it was a huge wake-up call. I was like, I need to get a grip on, these knee-jerk reactions, especially to those everyday stressors.
Totally. And that's the beauty of self-awareness. It's the first step towards, taking control of our emotional responses instead of letting them control us.
Okay, so we've dipped our toes into self-awareness. But how does that connect to understanding the emotions of others? That's where empathy comes in, right?
Absolutely. And the Lestallion article defines it beautifully. Empathy is about finding echoes of another person in yourself. It bridges gaps and builds deeper connections.
Finding echoes of another person in yourself.
Mm.
I love that. It's like you're trying to tune into their frequency, understanding their world.
And the prompts in this section really challenge us to do exactly that. Like this one. Think of a moment when someone shared their emotions with you. What could you have done to show more empathy?
It's so easy to get caught up in our own reactions, but this prompt forces us to hit pause
Yeah.
and really consider what the other person is going through.
Sometimes showing empathy is less about saying the right thing and more about just simply being present, listening without judgment, validating their feelings, even if you haven't experienced that exact same situation.
So true. Okay, this next prompt is a classic for a reason. Describe a situation where you had to put yourself in someone else's shoes. How did it change your perspective? It's like that saying, don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their moccasins.
It's about shifting perspectives, which can be incredibly powerful for building empathy, compassion. When we step outside of our own experiences and we try to see the world through someone else's eyes, it opens up a whole new level of understanding.
Absolutely. And speaking of seeing things from different perspectives, this last prompt from the empathy section really resonated with me. Consider how cultural differences can impact empathy. How can you become more empathetic towards people from diverse backgrounds?
That's such an important point. What might be considered a normal, even healthy emotional response in one culture
Right.
could be perceived completely differently in another.
It's about being sensitive to those nuances, right?
Hmm.
Understanding that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to empathy. It's like that old saying, before you judge someone, walk a mile in their shoes, except this time we're using journaling to, like, really understand those different perspectives.
You-
But what happens when it's our OWN emotions we're struggling with?
That's where self-regulation comes in. It's the ability to, manage our emotional responses, especially in those challenging situations. Think of it as like having an internal volume knob
Oh, okay.
for your feelings.
Turning it down when things get too loud. I like that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? Like, it feels like some days my emotions have other plans.
You're right. It definitely takes practice, but the more we understand like our triggers and we develop those healthy coping mechanisms, the better we become at, riding those emotional waves.
Okay.
And that's where journaling can be incredibly powerful.
So it's like we're not just, like, passively feeling our emotions, We're actively engaging with them, trying to understand them better.
Exactly. And the prompts in this self-regulation section of this Lestallion article, they really dig into that. One that I found particularly insightful was, reflect on a time you felt frustrated. How did you handle it? And what could you do differently?
Oh, frustration is a big one for me. Sometimes it feels like I'm one traffic jam away from a total meltdown.
Mm.
So how can, like, journaling about those moments actually help?
It helps us identify those unhealthy patterns, those knee-jerk reactions that might feel good in the moment, but ultimately don't serve us.
Yeah.
Maybe you tend to bottle up your frustration,
Oh, yeah.
which can lead to like resentment and even bigger blow-ups down the road. Or perhaps you lash out, which can, damage relationships.
Ouch. Yeah. Been on both sides of that.
Journaling gives us a chance to like hit the rewind button, to reflect on those situations with a calmer mind and explore those healthier alternatives.
So instead of just reacting, like, in the heat of the moment,
Right.
we're giving ourselves the space to actually choose a different response.
Exactly. And as we practice self-regulation, we start to build resilience. We're better equipped to handle those inevitable curveballs life throws our way.
It's like we're leveling up
Mm.
our emotional intelligence. But speaking of challenges, what about those times when we, like, hit a wall, when our motivation starts to dwindle?
That's where understanding the why
And okay.
behind our goals becomes crucial. And the Lestallion article had this like really interesting prompt. Think about a role model who inspires you. What qualities do they have that motivate you?
Ooh, I love that. We all have those people we admire, right? Those
Sure.
who seem to embody the qualities we aspire to. But how does that tie into motivation?
Well, by reflecting on their traits, like their resilience, their determination, their passion,
Yeah.
we can gain insights into what drives us, too. Often we find that our role models faced, similar challenges, similar doubts, yet they persevered.
Right.
And that can be incredibly empowering.
It's like we're borrowing a bit of their fire
Yeah,
to fuel our own journey.
exactly. And it reminds us that we're not alone in those moments of self-doubt.
Yeah.
Everyone faces obstacles. It's how we respond to them that makes all the difference.
So it's not just about, like, admiring these role models from afar.
Yeah.
It's about, like, extracting those qualities
Yeah.
that we admire and, like, integrating them into our own lives.
Absolutely, because ultimately motivation is like a muscle. The more we flex it, the stronger it becomes. And having those, inspiring role models, it can give us that extra push when we need it most.
So we've talked about self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, and motivation.
Hmm.
It feels like we're building a really solid foundation for emotional intelligence.
We are. And now it's time to take all of those internal insights and apply them to our interactions with others, which brings us to social skills.
So this is where it all comes together.
Yeah.
We're taking all that self-awareness, empathy, and self-regulation, and we're using it to build stronger, more meaningful relationships.
Precisely. Social skills are the outward expression of emotional intelligence. It's about using all that we've learned about ourselves and others to navigate social situations with, grace and authenticity.
And of course, the Lestallion article has some, like, really great journaling prompts for this too.
It does.
One that caught my eye was, reflect on a recent conversation that went well. What made it effective? It's interesting because we often, like, dwell on the conversations that went wrong.
Right.
But this flips the script.
It does. By analyzing our successes, we can identify those communication habits that contribute to those positive interactions.
Okay.
Maybe it's your ability to, like, listen actively, to ask insightful questions, or to offer genuine validation.
Right.
Whatever it is, bringing those strengths to light can help us replicate them in future
It's
conversations.
like we're deconstructing what makes a great conversation, figuring out the magic formula so we can have more of those positive interactions.
Exactly. And just like any skill, communication improves with practice. The more we flex those social muscles, the more natural it becomes to navigate those tricky interpersonal dynamics.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. It feels like we've covered so much ground, from self-awareness to empathy, self-regulation to motivation, and finally, these all-important social skills.
It's like we've assembled a toolbox, each element building upon the last to create a more emotionally intelligent version of ourselves.
I love that analogy. And you know what's great about these journal prompts? They're not just one-time exercises. We can revisit them again and again, each time gaining new layers of understanding as we evolve.
That's the beauty of journaling, isn't it? It's a dynamic process, a conversation with ourselves that evolves over time. As we grow and change, so too do our insights.
And I imagine that as we become more emotionally intelligent, those positive changes start to ripple out into other areas of our lives.
Absolutely. Our relationships become more fulfilling, our communication more effective. We're better equipped to handle stress, set healthy boundaries, and navigate those inevitable challenges that life throws our way.
It's like we're not just leveling up in one area of life.
Right.
We're leveling up across the board.
That's a great way to put it. And the best part is, there's no finish line. Emotional intelligence is a journey, not a destination. There's always room for growth, for deepening our understanding of ourselves and others.
So where do we go from here? How do we take all of this amazing information and put it into practice?
Well, I'd encourage you to check out those 50 journal prompts from the Lestallion blog post. See which ones resonate with you the most, and don't be afraid to really dig deep. Be honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses, your emotional patterns, and those areas where you'd like to grow.
Because ultimately, that's what this deep dive has been all about. Embracing those emotions, understanding their power, and learning how to harness them to create a more fulfilling and authentic life.
Beautifully said. And remember, emotional intelligence is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and never stop exploring the fascinating landscape of your own emotions.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This has been an incredible conversation, and it's given us a lot to reflect on. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought-provoking question, something to ponder as you continue on your journey toward greater emotional intelligence. We've talked about understanding our emotions and others, but what about managing those emotions in the heat of the moment? What are some tools or techniques you can use when you feel yourself getting overwhelmed? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so feel free to share your insights on our social media channels. Until next time, happy journaling, everyone.